Other subjects. Mark agrees with the following concepts. 1. That there are many different timelines. 2. That Earth is a hologram, and that this whole galaxy multiverse is in essence probably a series of holograms. Humans have simultaneous incarnations and reincarnate. Time and space are simultaneous. Mark thinks that our brain can assist other versions of ourselves on other timelines. And yes, there are armies of androids in underground bases both under the US and in China underground, and he has seen the Chinese androids. He still insists that cloning is a faulty, temporary science, and that most drones either give themselves away through off behavior or fall apart within a limited time, 3 or 4 months. Okay, so now I'll go through the various topics. How Mark got from the ground to the Orion ships. He went through portals. There are several different kinds. We have covered this in prior interviews, but he specifically covered this again here at my request, and that is through the use of jump points for shuttlecraft called Lagrange points, or L5. And there are 5 key points on this planet called Lagrange points. And this topic is covered to some degree in a previous interview. As I say, Google has a quote about this, the Lagrange points, which is, quote, structure of Lagrange points. There are 5 Lagrange points around major bodies such as a planet or a star. 3 of them lie along a line connecting the 2 large bodies. In the Earth-Sun system, the first point, L1, lies between Earth and the Sun at about 1 million miles from Earth, unquote. Mark says those points allow one to jump off the planet easily and may be used for shuttlecraft going back and forth to the larger Orion craft, which are parked above the planet. Mark says those points allow one to jump off planet easily and to be used by shuttlecraft going back and forth to larger Orion craft parked above the planet. However, now amateur astronomers focus on those points. They, the secret space program, don't use them very often. 2 kinds of portals, and I guess there are more, but these are the ones he's telling us about. One is called a dimensional portal, and that's where you travel with your body intact. The quantum gate, which is where you disassemble and reassemble your body on the other side. This one is dangerous, and you can die in the process. Mark never uses the quantum gate. And so then I'm going to go into a key point in this entire interview. A key point in this entire interview is the AI takeover of Earth. There are 6 AIs from other planets and beings attacking planet Earth at this time, embedded in our AI and networks, and we are fighting them. This is a more direct, unequivocal statement about the state of AI on planet Earth than Mark has previously been willing to tell me. At this time, due to attacks on Mark, Joanne, me, and his family, he is now pushing the envelope even further on disclosure. This is my assessment in that case. Okay, human army. There are around 200,000 humans that were taken off planet by the Raptors, and they are ready to return and fight for humanity, but so far are unable to do so because humans are so unaware they would think it was part of Satan's army, when in fact they are dedicated to the survival of humanity. And this is one of the reasons why Raptors want disclosure. The takeover of planet Earth has actually already happened. We are battling the 6 AIs ongoing. We are also battling the Draco reptilians and certain species of greys directly. The greys report to the reps report to the Draco. They are using AI as well. And the trogs are also an insectoid species that are also working against us. Note, we have some friendly AIs as well as other beings. For example, if you see my interview 9, he talks about the gaseous beings near Saturn that have been protecting us and a portal there from basic takeover, including the raptors, who are more equipped to battle the AIs than us. And for more on that, also see interview 9, where he goes into more detail about how the raptors are able to handle the AI and to actually sense them and their presence. And yes, this does include an AI takeover of our financial system. That takeover has basically already happened. This is, again, according to Mark. Disclosure has slowed. Right now, the raptors and some other beings who are fighting for us are pissed off at what is currently going on with the attacks on truth tellers. And he has heard that 6 UFO researchers have been murdered since Christmas. He doesn't have those names, but will supply them to me. The raptors and some other beings are very angry that disclosure seems to have been stalled recently. And I don't know if Jim Mars is included among that group of individuals who have been murdered. It is possible. Not knowing who their friends are within the Secret Space Command, basically those working within it are no longer sure who their friends are, in part because AI has gotten in so deep they can no longer trust their own stuff or each other. Regarding the Iran war, yes, it is happening. They took troops out of Syria but left the Russians in charge on the ground there. We are working with the Russians in this war, which is actually what I have been saying. And the war with Iran does lead to the war with China, and the Russians will side with the U.S. And there's more about this in the Henoch prophecies, the Billy Meyer Henoch prophecies, and as well as information that came to us in the early days through a whistleblower called Henry Deacon, also known as Arthur Neumann. Right now, they are trying to decide if they're going to start the official war very soon. There are races like raptors that are working very hard to stop the war. I asked if Syrians are similar in bloodline to the Iranian Aryan bloodline, and Mark said yes, and that humans with Aryan and also the blonde and blue-eyed human females are the most targeted and compatible as far as DNA with the reptilians. And this is partially the problem. Sickle cell anemia. Reptilians are not compatible with this gene, and it would rule out any person with that code for genetic breeding, food, or even sexual purposes. They cannot feed off the black race, and I guess specifically off the parts of the black race that have sickle cell anemia. Stargates in the Zagreb Mountains. There are Syrian refugees being taken off the planet and used for food and breeding. The reason for the war in Iran is to take over the stargates in the Zagreb Mountains. Those stargates are between Iran, Afghanistan, and Iran and Iraq. And this war has been ongoing. He has also talked about it in my previous interviews with him, and said that these are actually shifting gates. So this makes the defense of them even more difficult. They are stargates through which the reptoids, Draco, and Greys are bringing in huge craft to take over Earth and transport thousands of human slaves off-world. So those gates are heavily contested. Regarding the reptoids and the Draco, China is run by the reptoids. Russia is out for themselves, but if you are useful to their agenda, and the U.S. is, then they will work with you, and that includes the UK. North Korea is run by the reptoids. The Dracos are in control over those countries because they are in control of the reptoids. Has there been a change in Trump? There does seem to have been a change in Trump over the last 6 months. Mark declined to say more about this, but he doesn't think the indictments are actually being acted on at this time. I asked him about the tunnel boring machines that have carved tunnels in plain sight in Tenerife, which is one of the sites of Atlantis and in one of the Canary Islands, where I went over the Christmas holiday. I asked him about these tunnels, and basically he said yes, they were created by the same tunnel boring machines used in underground bases. He said there are tunnels like that also in Canada. They do this in plain sight because they figure humans are too dumbed down to get it. He also mentioned the African Rift Valley that has a huge reptilian base, and he said that's because they can hide out in Africa. Regarding Sardinia and the spider beings and reptoids, I asked him about Sardinia because recently I was asked if I would lead a tour to Sardinia because there are many ancient sites there and lots of evidence of reptilian involvement. However, I told Mark that I have declined to go to Sardinia because when I looked at it on a psychic, intuitive level, I saw that there were tons of spider beings and reptilians there, and Mark said I was absolutely right. He said he wouldn't even go there, and it is true, not only in the past but also now. And my apologies to the people that live in Sardinia. I think it's probably a very beautiful island. I've seen pictures of it, and I do apologize for this information, but what can you do? Just for a comparison, from what I understand, Miles Johnston has a source that has told him that there are spider beings hiding out in the area in North England called the Lake District, and in the tunnels there. So that is also very disconcerting information. Turkey is a last stronghold for reptilians in the past, before they left Earth at one point, and there is so much reptilian symbolism in Turkey. This is because it was a last holdout before they left planet Earth, and I'm not sure of the exact date of that. However, they are back in force now. I will say we have made a documentary called Göbekli Tepe. It's available on my YouTube channel. I highly recommend it. We were fortunate to visit Turkey and Göbekli Tepe about a year or two ago, and our documentary is excellent, I will say, and we have images there that no one sees around the internet. And I also will say that I interviewed a very interesting woman, Farah Yuduzu, I believe is how you say her last name, and she is an investigator and a ufologist in Turkey, excellent ufologist, and again interviewed her, and her interview is available on my YouTube channel. We are working on getting a tour group together to go back and do some more investigations in Turkey. Ongoing operations. Mark conveyed to me that he and his team still do go on operations. This was not said but implied. He said he can't say more, but, quote, he is not always in his cell. The raptors are protecting me. Mark says they are protecting me and sometimes fly over my house when they sense I am under attack. He said that they also communicate in the early stages with humans by singing in soft and engaging tones. I mentioned that I was evacuated during the fires, and Mark said that elementals tend to protect wealthy homes and areas because that is where they prefer to hang out. And the fires are collateral damage in the war over the stargates and portals. He said there are lots of portals in the area where I live, which is north of LA, and that the Chumash Indians were well aware of this. They used to guard the portals, and the Chumash Range all along the coast, all the way up to Santa Barbara. They are unable, the Secret Space Program, Space Command is unable to hide the violence in the war with the alien races, so they create collateral damage in the form of fires and other so-called natural disasters like earthquakes. The Trump administration, they are the only ones fighting for us in the U.S. at this time. But there is something going on right now with that administration. Clones are not reliable. Again, regarding clones, he said that clones get taken over too easily, and so they are not really a viable way to push things forward. I asked him if Kevin Spacey was set up, and Mark totally agrees that Kevin Spacey is being set up because of what he knows. John Lear. As many people know, I interviewed John Lear on stage recently at Laughlin, and have interviewed John several times on my YouTube channel and think very highly of him. However, apparently we have a disagreement with regard to Mark Richards and who he is. John did agree originally with Mark about the spider beings in Vietnam, and you need to see either my clips of John stating that he agrees, or the actual interview, which contains John being told about the spider beings in Vietnam. His spontaneous reaction was to agree with Mark Richards unequivocally, in part because Mark's information seemed to agree with another person that John thinks highly of, called Lou Baldwin, who's written several books. Let's see, on the group behind John Lear, I believe that John Lear is run by MJ-12. It makes logical sense. He was involved with, members of MJ-12 were involved with John's family as he was growing up. It just goes with the territory and John's history. And so I believe John is now under orders from MJ-12 to basically disinfo or discredit Mark Richards. So he's doing so very strenuously. And I understand that recently he did an interview with Miles Johnston, in which he's again emphatically saying that he thinks Mark is, one of the things he said on a news group was he thought Mark was the quote-unquote biggest liar in the world. I think that John's over-the-top statements and the fact that he won't research Mark, he will not look into the court transcripts, he won't look into the case at all, and he also won't watch my interviews. This is the 10th interview. So if he ever wants to wake up and watch that information, that would be great. But I do understand that he is under orders, and this is the kind of thing where basically John has to protect his family. In order to do that, he has to do what he's told in order to sort of safeguard the so-called secrecy of Space Command and the Secret Space Program when he is charged with doing so. And I did suggest that Mark write to John with info that only a pilot of a large craft would know, but again, it's probably a moot point at this juncture, simply because John seems to have been under orders not to see Mark as a true witness, when in fact he is. And just for the record here again, for those who are interested, Simon Parkes has been contacted by his own sources, and Simon Parkes is a well-regarded source himself, and he has dealt with the mantid beings directly, as well as reptilians, and he has been told unequivocally that Mark is absolutely who he claims to be, and he has actually made a video that substantiates and backs this information that I'm giving you, saying that Mark is innocent of the crime for which he has been jailed. So let's see. John Lear was told that by some of his sources, which includes Cherry, and another source who has been in touch with me over the history of Camelot, who I know, who is, I doubt saying that that Mark is not correct, but a couple other sources John has that tell him that Dulcie was never invaded by us, but that is untrue. Please see the CIA whistleblower who, on his deathbed, did a confession at the Stephen Bassett Disclosure Conference, and I have that linked on my website. And that man was interviewed by Rich Dolan and Linda Moulton Howe, and his testimony is quite compelling since he was on his deathbed. I believe he has since died. Keep in mind that all of this is a challenge of discernment. I encourage those reading and watching this video to watch all of my Mark Richards interviews, listen carefully, see what resonates. Discernment is about being able to tell truth from falsity, and with all information you need to do your own research. Regarding micronovas, I asked Mark about micronovas from the Sun and other stars several light years away. For information on this, see Paul Collins' investigation into the micronovas, also called multi-messenger gamma ray bursts, and the link is provided for you in the transcript. Mark acknowledges that these are a threat, but says that he has been told by our alien friends, including the Raptors, that they would warn us in advance. They are able to redirect the burst. Project Camelot was also told years ago by Valery Uvarov, who is the Ron Pandolfi counterpart in the Russian KGB. So he was head of a Russian Weird Desk for several years, Uvarov was, and Pandolfi was head of the CIA Weird Desk and is still very active out there. That there are installations on Earth that were built by alien races to handle incoming asteroids. It occurs to me micronovas would fall into this category as well. Regarding the new human, in many ways Mark Richards is like a new human. He grew up in the secret space program. He knows we are at war with various ET races for Earth and human sovereignty. He knows that there are both good and bad, or positive and negative, service to self versus service to other, aliens everywhere as there are humans, and that there are more good than bad out in the multiverse. But the bad ones can ruin your day, your year, your month, or your eon, as has been documented in the Oceana Dean Voyager books quite extensively. It is also refreshing to talk to him because it's not about whether ET is real or AI is real. This is a given. Instead, we talk about what is in essence the exopolitical playing field and the pressures both on and off planet, and what really matters in the human trajectory or journey into the future. We have alliances of mutual benefit to both parties with various ET and inner Earth races. Regarding blonde, blue-eyed females. The blonde, blue-eyed females, and my eyes are green, just FYI, are perfectly compatible DNA mix for the reptilian genetic engineering. In fact, they are the main sacrificial victim of the Illuminati, and this information comes from various sources, including Shane the Ruiner and others. And for the interviews with Shane the Ruiner, please go to my YouTube channel and put in his name. Judging from this, what it indicates is that blue-eyed blondes and Aryan lines have the most reptilian DNA of all the races, hence the compatibility. There was a raptor wedding in late February, around the 28th, and Mark says this was a major wedding uniting two major raptor family lines, and Mark calls it a great love story. Regarding Jan Michael Vincent, the actor, He was a close friend of Mark's and died of alcoholism because he had seen too much, knew too much, and couldn't handle it. Mark had the utmost respect for him and misses him. Regarding Ernest Borgnine, another famous actor who actually started off in the Navy, and both he and Chad Everett saw some things off the coast of Malibu that changed their life. The secret space program was afraid that Borgnine was going to talk, so they offered him a career in Hollywood, and he took it. He was also a friend of Mark's. There's a new national park off of Vandenberg Air Force Base. This national park is called Jack and Laura Dangermond Preserve and has been established to hide a huge ET underwater and underground base that stretches down to Malibu. This is the same base discovered on Google and made popular by Jimmy Church. Jimmy vowed he was going to investigate it further, but Jimmy clearly was shut down. And I do want to say that from what I understand, Jimmy did not discover it, but he certainly made it popular. And I'm sorry that I forget the name of the person who did discover it on Google. Apparently a lot of money has gone into this national park, which is really a cover for a huge alien base. Regarding nuclear tests in Nevada and off the coast of LA, many so-called nuclear tests were not really tests, but used to close portals to keep unfriendly beings out. They used nukes to displace the grid and to close the whole grid down. The nuke off the coast of LA, which was 100 miles off the coast, was not a test, but a closing of a portal. This is a very interesting piece of information. Mark says the AI has forced our military to dismantle HAARP. They took down the U.S. and Russia HAARP, and that leaves us defenseless, according to Mark. Our military were forced by the AI, and they obeyed the order. Project Camelot was told years ago that HAARP technology could construct a shield over sections of planet Earth, and that allowed us to detect incoming craft. This is what actually might be the truth, and what we were told. And Mark's comment that we are now defenseless is very significant with regard to HAARP, and obviously this would relate to the more positive aspects of HAARP. Regarding the Dracos, they are involved in wars in the Orion constellation, but are also very involved in Earth. They are trying to split the Raptors' focus. The Raptors are working with the Air Force from humans and Earth by causing wars elsewhere. Regarding other timelines and the AI, which apparently are getting mixed up, the generals, Mark says, are now realizing that AI could be making mistakes and confusing the timelines and acting inappropriately because they think they're on a different timeline. So the AI may be assessing a situation, thinking it's happening right now on our timeline, but it may be happening on another timeline. And the action the AI chooses may play out on our timeline, and we haven't even arrived at the place where the AIs are attempting to deal with. And we have no control over those AIs. We don't know if the AIs have the ability to distinguish between which timeline they are on. It's important to know that Mark's enemies were Kennedy's enemies. And the day Kennedy went to Dallas, he was on the way to address an aerospace group of scientists about what was really going on, and he was going to disclose the real war with aliens that we are fighting. Regarding the Pentagon, the plane that supposedly hit the Pentagon, even if it wasn't a plane, which Mark acknowledges, Mark says it's important to remember that they had a manifest for that plane with supposed passengers, and that those passengers contained some top agency people, several generals, and others, and all of them have disappeared. No matter what really hit the Pentagon, those people are gone, off-planet, underground, or dead, or possibly given new identities with their minds wiped. We don't know which. Regarding AI and 5G, the Internet of Things, 5G lays the groundwork for AI to travel everywhere around the planet without restriction. And Mark says that this is key, and this is also something that I intuitively have said prior to this information coming to me from Mark. So that is the end of this interview. Again, the transcript is a written transcript available on my website, projectcamelot.tv. And I want to thank you for watching and for listening and for supporting the work of Project Camelot. Take care, and please use discernment and do your own investigation. Thank you, and good night.